What's going on, everybody? This is Drew here. I want to welcome you all to a brand new episode of Phoenix Down. This is Phoenix Down 122.0, and we are playing a new game, new series here. We're continuing on with our sequels, spin-offs, and spiritual successors, and we are playing both A Bird Story and Finding Paradise. And the correlation there is that a long time ago we played a game called To the Moon, and Finding Paradise is the sequel To the Moon. Today I have with me Matt.
Hello, friends. Looking forward to this game, actually, given some reminiscing about To the Moon and remembering really enjoying it.
Yeah, yeah. So originally I was thinking I don't know if I'm gonna like this game, but it was actually very endearing, and I think legitimately almost made me cry a couple of times. Very,
Yeah.
very emotional game.
Mostly
Um,
the ending, right? There's a little bit of a mystery, but I just remember a real powerful ending to that game.
Yeah, very. I mean, they hit some pretty hard subjects, right?
Yeah.
Somebody at the end of their life, and this company, Sigmus, is that the name of it? Sigmus?
Sigmund?
Sigmund?
Sigmund Corporation, I think.
Yeah, like Sigmund Freud, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I'm assuming this takes place in the near future, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, that's
Um, and what this company does is that they come kind of like at a end of life care where uh, somebody is about to pass and they have to sign up for this service where they have these two technicians who go into the mind of the person who is dying and can alter and change their memories. Um, so basically, you end your life with whatever you asked for, you know. Um,
no
well,
regrets.
yeah, no regrets, anything like that. Um, and it follows these two technicians that work for the company, Watts and Rosaline, I think is what it is. And
And very much a sequel because these are the same two characters from To the Moon, right?
yes, these are the same characters. And I feel like both these games come off as the technicians are more of the catalyst for the story, you know. The person who is dying is kind of like the main character. Um, and
It feels like you could
yeah,
serialize it in that way, right? It's like the quirky adventures of these people getting lost in people's minds,
yeah,
right? Like they may be the characters, but they're not like the story. They're not the heart of the story. That's usually going to be the series of memories that they're unraveling and trying to set right, if you will.
right. So, which I should say, we first played a game called A Bird Story, and A Bird Story is basically what bridges the gap between To the Moon and Finding Paradise. Um, and once you beat the game, which only took like an hour, maybe hour and a half max for me, um, you realize it's the kid that you're playing as is the person who is going to be dying and finding paradise. It's basically the early stages of the person's life. So in a bird story, there is zero dialogue. It is all just told by visual effects and stuff like that.
Yeah, which is
Uh,
interesting
it
because you definitely spend a little time interpreting the things around you because there isn't text to be reading, and I
yeah
kind of like that where it's the gameplay itself is very linear, but even just the interpretation of what is the situation the character is in, how are people reacting to him, you really have to like pay attention to the small things around him. Colin, I believe is his name, and I kind of like that just because I don't want to say passive, but because you're absorbing the story rather than being told it. But I don't know. I
Yeah,
just I liked it because there's a little bit more creativity. I feel like, or if not that the game itself is any more creative, there's more importance to those decisions because they're all you have.
right. Yeah, so Bird's story has a child who I think you learn pretty quickly is kind of like oh man, what's it called? A latchkey kid.
Latchkey, yeah, left home alone.
Yeah, left home alone. Um, you never see his parents. Um, and he likes to make paper airplanes.
So, do you think he
Um,
was lonely and a little bit of an outcast because his parents left him home, and he just kind of grew up maybe a bit more alone than other kids, or do you think he was always just kind of a bit of a loner and
I don't.
yeah, it's hard to tell a little bit for me. Like
Yeah,
his parents are clearly they were like written out of this story because they're not important, and clearly
right.
he's in almost all of his interactions he's a kind of a lonely creative kid. He entertains himself, he plays with himself. um but my first thought to that was like, why, or like how is this? Just has he always been like this, or is he a product of his abandonment from his parents? Are we meant to read that his parents are abandoning him? And so that's the
Right.
kind of thing that the game never really says explicitly, and so you're kind of left to your own devices to interpret the kind of the impact. And I mean, that's not really a part of the story, so it's just definitely
Yeah.
a side tangent that my brain went on when just when seeing this kid kind of by himself a lot.
Yeah. But the kid goes to school. Um, seems like his teacher doesn't like him too much. He gets in trouble a lot, gets kicked out of the classroom.
Kids make fun of him a little
Um,
bit. Like at one point, they take his little paper airplane and throw it at the teacher, and then she gets mad at him, and so they're kind of
yep.
like pranking him.
And nobody plays with him at the playground.
Yeah, Seesaw is kind of boring with
Um,
one person.
yeah. But I guess he's walking home from school one day, and he think he sees that what looks like a damn badger.
Yeah, here's a bit of a ruckus in the
um,
in the woods.
yeah, and a bird is getting chased by an animal, and he wards it off, scares it away. The bird's injured. Um, can't fly anymore because it hurt its wing. So he takes it home with him, and basically wants to nurse it back to health. Um, he he eventually takes it to the vet, and it seems like this is obviously done through no text at all, but like just visually. And I think they do have like some thought bubbles that pop up
Yeah,
occasionally.
sometimes like happy faces and stuff, or rain
Yeah,
clouds or something like that to abstract his thoughts a little bit.
yeah. But the vet obviously wants to keep the bird there, I guess, to make sure it gets well. Well, he's kind of, taken a liking to the bird, so he wants to keep it for himself. So as the vet goes back into the back to get something, the bird and him's gone. Oh no. So he runs out, and the kids ran off with the bird, takes it back home with him. And you see throughout this story, um, the bird's very apprehensive to the kid to begin with, but he starts feeding it, and giving it water and stuff like that. And eventually the bird, starts to come around and hangs out with him and stuff like that, and becomes his little friend, his little companion. He watches TV with it, and he's playing with it. He's making paper airplanes and throwing them, and they're jumping through little puddles together and stuff like
Playing
that. And
fetch with the planes.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, playing fetch and stuff like that. And um, he brings it to school, has a show and tell with the bird, and all the kids are really liking it because it's the kid with the bird, and they're all playing with him and stuff like that. So things are kind of turning around for him, seems like.
It doesn't necessarily
But
look like he's stealing the bird. Obviously, the bird's kind of happy to be there and
yeah,
makes a little home in his backpack.
yeah. And then on the balcony, he has like a little tree shrub that the bird kind of nests in. Um,
It's one
and
little fun hide and
in this,
seek where he keeps like sticking his head out trying to find the bird.
yeah, there's a there's a couple of parts here where I feel like the kid's imagination kind of runs a little wild. Um, he gets, we do have a couple of scenes where he's doing things that obviously did not actually happen, like flying on a giant paper airplane.
Or getting launched on the
Uh,
seesaw up into space.
yeah, so a lot of this stuff is obviously in the kid's imagination.
Which I really love the way they do that throughout the game, how kind of the environments are blending into each other.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, that happened multiple times.
yeah, I mean sometimes it'll be like the forest is like and he steps out of the forest into his living room and all of a sudden he's watching TV and then two steps later he's in school. And it just comes across as very dreamlike or like memories getting jumbled a little bit. And from what I remember about To the Moon, it's a little bit total recall with the memory implantation, but the fact that you've got these two scientists going in and messing with the mind, for me, it's still very um, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And
I've never seen that movie.
it's in my top 10. I absolutely adore that movie, but, without trying to spoil anything, they're in a mind and they're kind of going through mind and memories and because of that people are like escaping from one memory to another and because of that things are blending into each other like just as an image they crawl into bed and pull the covers up over their face I think and they open it and that bed is like isolated on a beach with the waves coming in and it has that same kind of one environment blending into another that is really evoked for me in this game and the whole concept of this game and To the Moon and Finding Paradise is all very Eternal Sunshine for me and I really like that style linking it together and then also fitting with the fact that they are in this character's mind. I
Yeah,
really really enjoy that part of their visual storytelling.
yeah. So I guess it actually happened. I'm not sure. The vet starts to chase after them, finds him, and wants to get the bird back. That could be another part of the imagination running wild. Um, and he thinks he loses the bird. He falls from the sky. That obviously did not happen. And he goes back home and he's sad because there's the bird's gone now. We don't know where it's at. But he goes out to the balcony and the bird's there. And the bird now shows him that, hey, I can fly now. So, you can take off this bandage off my wing. He's now got a companion. And basically, the last thing you do in this game is let the bird go. The bird's in his hand, and you have to release the bird. And the bird flies off with his companion.
After you get that one
And you
long
see it.
section on the paper airplane where basically you're trying to find a nest or a mate for the bird
Yeah,
and none of them
yeah,
are
going to different little islands.
yeah floating islands in the sky.
Hmm.
And then you get the part where you're like, is it after the bird leaves and you're trying to find it and you're on the paper airplane again and you're in the middle of a lightning storm?
That's whenever you're getting chased.
Yeah, that's when you're getting
You
chased. You
escape.
escape onto it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's whenever the lightning hits the paper airplane and you fall down and then you lose the bird. But then the bird shows back up at his house. And yeah, I mean, so you didn't know this, but at the very end, it shows that, the classic To the Moon timeline of young child, teenager, you know, 20 something, middle aged, old person. And it was showing this is the beginning of the life of the next person. So that is the end of A Bird Story.
Could have
And then
very
we
well, I
launch
guess,
into,
been a part of Finding Paradise, really. But calling it out as its own little story, I thought was nice. Right? It doesn't have any real mystery to it, and it kind of ends on a little bit of a cliched note, like if you love it, let it go. But I thought it was well done. I really enjoyed some of the moments, and I loved the way it was presented.
yeah, yeah, I did too. It was really nice.
A game I would ever necessarily
But
want to play through again, but it was a really nice one off.
yeah, yeah. A Bird Story. When did that release? A Bird Story. 2014 was when that released. And then
I think it was 3 years
Finding
before Finding Paradise.
Paradise. Finding Paradise was 2017. This guy takes his time with his stuff.
Well, now I think the third game in the series is out, right?
Is it?
Yeah,
Finding
something
Paradise
imposter.
sequel.
It's Imposter Factory.
Imposter Factory.
Seems not to have made much of an impression. I didn't really realize it was out until I was looking around earlier.
When did that come out?
September of 2021.
Oh,
Yeah, still at the same point. 4 more years for that next game.
I think Imposter Factory is kind of like a bird story. It's a short one, like a teaser for the next game.
Yeah, yeah, that could be.
Yeah,
That would explain why it didn't get a whole lot of press as a big release by them.
right. So yeah, we go into Finding Paradise, and we now meet our person. Colin is his name, who is a ex pilot. I guess he was a commercial airlines pilot. Um, we then go into the roles of our two technicians, Watts and Rosaline, and their antics together. Uh,
He's definitely a little goofy.
he's a little goofy. Rosaline, it almost comes off as like Rosaline doesn't like him. He's annoying as hell, but it seems like they both kind of like each other. It's playful, but yet they still get aggravated at each other a lot. Um, and they're on their way to do this service. Um, Colin is now on his deathbed. He has a wife who is still in good health and a son. And when arriving there, um, we have to ask, what is your wish? Because that's what we're here to do. We're here to give you your final wish before you pass away. And there's parts in this beginning where they're kind of like re-explaining how this works, basically.
Yeah. They make a
And
joke
you
that
can
they're like
choose
a
to go
genie.
through it or not. Yeah, but the first mystery is, well, what does he want? Because nobody knew. He didn't actually say. One of the other mysteries that we get is we forgot the paperwork. We thought we forgot the paperwork at the office. Watts forgot it, so we call up. I guess another technician. I can't. She didn't come off like a technician. She came off more like a secretary.
Yeah, I thought it was more of a secretary, but maybe a technician.
Yeah. Um, and when she goes into Watt's office to get the paperwork, she finds something. Like there's like a secret hideaway cubby
She wasn't
in
supposed to know
Watts's
about it.
office. Yeah, and then she changes her tone, so instead of like faxing it over or I guess not faxing, scanning it over to them, she says she's just going to drive up there and give it to them. And they're like, oh, that's weird. Okay, whatever. But yeah. So the first big mystery we have is what does this guy want? What is his final wish? So we jack into his head, and we start at the last memory that he had, which was him basically confirming that he wanted to have this service done. And he, that they always were able to connect to the conscious because that memory knows, oh, I'm on my deathbed and you guys are here to give me my last wish. And we ask him outright, what do you want? And he's like, well, why don't you just go back and see? Like, you can use the mementos and go back on my memories and you can find out that way,
Because he very specifically says, "I want you to change something, but I don't want you to
but
change.
leave
Yeah,
everything.
leave everything the same.
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
to have a
Leave
different life
everything
without having
intact.
changed anything, basically."
I think there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think there is. We haven't finished this. We didn't make it very far into Finding Paradise. We're gonna do that next. But yeah. So that's the kind of the first reveal is that he wants to live a fulfilled life, and all the supporting characters are kind of like, you did though.
And
You
even just that as a mystery is interesting because it's like anybody could think at their own life and say, what could I have done differently? Or what did I not do that I wish I had? And at the same time, be like, I'm not sure I would want to change anything because had I done something differently, what would I have missed out on that I'm happy I did? And so it's such a good premise for these games just generally because I feel like everybody's life has puts and takes and things that you might want to change, but then the butterfly effect, you might not want to change anything. And
yeah,
so I imagine most people would be in the same dilemma that Colin's in here, where like, yeah, maybe I regret some things, but would I actually change my life, or do I think any other path through my life might have been better? I'm not
right.
sure I would want that if I had to roll the dice and see what a different life might look like. Maybe you never would, no matter how many regrets you have. And that almost says as much about the person as it does about the life lived.
Yeah, I think the lesson of this story, I could be wrong, but I think the lesson of the story is that everybody has regrets. It's not about having no regrets, it's about accepting the stuff that you had. And I think that's what's going to end up happening. I could be wrong though. Um, because I feel like that's a good life lesson. There's plenty of times I'm just like, man, I wish I'd have done this. Yeah, but you didn't, and you still turned out just fine.
Yeah. And I mean, it's
You know,
interesting when you think of that in the context of the statements like, if you can't control it, don't worry about it, right? Like,
it's true.
focus on where you are now and how to make things better rather than dwelling on what you can't change about the past. Well, this is an interesting alternative because you can care about the past. You have at least the opportunity to say, maybe I should worry about it because I could, at least in this one instant before my death, I could fix that thing that I've been dwelling on. Whereas everyone
Right.
else in our world can't fix it, so you might as well not worry about it. So
Sure.
it raises just a lot of like moral questions about what how much value do you put on what you've done, right? Because it makes sense that you would discount alternative lifelines if you can't get there anyway, because it's purely theoretical.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like it. I really dig the basic premise of this. of these games.
Yeah, there's some heavy stuff when you think about it.
And especially the first game. Like I had almost forgotten how much I really liked that ending, but to have maybe not been able to connect with that like soulmate and understand how to get some closure on that life, and having forgotten who it was that what you were even planning to do in life because of old age or drugs or whatever. I really like the end of that, and as I try to think about what this story might look like, I'm thinking about how in the first game he really was able to right a wrong. So in some ways, it makes sense that I think your kind of prediction is right, where if there's a moral to this game, it might be kind of the opposite, that you can't always fix things, and maybe you should accept the choices that you've made and the life that you've built for yourself, because whatever alternatives there might be either could be way worse or no more fulfilling, or you'd lose the things that you have loved about your current life. So
Yeah,
that absolutely wasn't the theme of the first game as I remember it. So it might make sense that they show an
yeah.
alternative version here.
The you made me think of something else. Another a Nick Cage joint, The Family Man.
Yeah, it's on my annual playlist.
There you go. But yeah. Uh, after going back, we go back to uh, him and his son. His son was going off to college or going to start a new job. I can't remember. And of course, they were having thoughts. Him and his wife both were having thoughts of, um, maybe he should get married, find a nice girl, settle down kind of thing. And go back again. So we should talk about the mechanics a little bit. So whenever you go into a memory, you have to go and find these orbs, and you get these orbs by seeing what has happened in this memory. What's so important about this memory, and then you unlock basically another memento. Um,
It's your thread through
so
his
you,
memories, right? Linking the
yeah,
linking the
yeah,
mementos.
yeah, and what makes this object, important throughout that life, kind of thing. Um, I'm trying to imagine they go back to one of the big things is we're going back to maybe a year earlier, or maybe in a few months earlier. Him and his wife are kind of having arguments about, I want to have this service done, I want to have my memories changed. And his wife is like, why? Do you regret us? Do you regret your child? You know, why change anything?
You
We had a
definitely
good
expect
life.
some, if not resentment, at least hurt or questioning. Like I'm a part of your life and you don't want it anymore.
Yeah, you don't want to remember me.
He's never explicit with what
Um,
it is that he wants to change.
yeah, he's basically just like, I can't answer that question. I remember him saying that. It's like, what do you want me to say? I don't know.
Which I'm sure wouldn't go over very well.
No, no. But eventually we find a book after an argument that the Colin and his wife have.
His
Um,
journal, right?
the I think it's his
Yeah.
journal, and when we go back in time with it, we go back to when he was a child. And of course, Watts and Rosling are like, why the hell did we go back this far? Like, we usually don't skip
It's usually
this stuff.
sequentially just
Like
going backwards in life
yeah,
until you
but this
reach
one is like,
whatever. I don't. Is that what it was? Where you go backwards until you reach the key focal point that you're trying to change? Not necessarily that you would
yeah,
always go back to childhood, because like if somebody loved their childhood and they wish they had joined I don't know, the Army instead of the Navy, you'd only go back to that point when they made that decision, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So the problem is we don't know how to fix this because it's like I want you to, you know, I want you to change things to where I have a fulfilled life, but don't change anything major kind of thing.
No direction,
And
but then
so we,
also
we don't
make me happier without telling you how to make me happier.
exactly. So we really have no direction. So that's kind of like why we're jumping all around. But also I think it's because, certain objects that we jump from, it's something like that journal. He's had it since he was a child. So when jumped, we jumped back to his childhood, and we finally get to see the latchkey kid. The parents are there. They both have to leave. I don't know what that means. Both parents going to work. It sounded like they were almost leaving for days.
Yeah, which is something I didn't really get, right? Because even just the thinking in a bird story, like there's definitely, the way I saw it, a feeling of abandonment. But on the other hand, they left you notes, I assume every day on the door.
That's what I was thinking.
So it may not be that they were abandoned. They're just choosing to show you, or he's just remembering the parts of his life where his parents weren't around for whatever reason. Maybe they were there every night and just he didn't interact with them much. I don't know.
I guess. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, and I don't know if this happens before a bird story or after a bird story, but he now has like a little stuffed animal that he is friends
It
with
made me
and
think it
does
was
things with.
earlier,
Watched
just because
earlier,
just because I assume he's younger if he's got a stuffed animal best friend.
right? So and then from there we jump to back to I wouldn't say old age, but older age,
Does he say how
and
old
he's
he
a
is when he's
pilot.
a kid? Because doesn't I could have swore at one point he says how old he is.
I didn't see that.
11 or 12 or 14 and yeah,
I'm not sure.
maybe not.
And then we jump where he's a pilot. He's piloting his final flight before he retires, I guess. And I think he brought his son and wife with him on this flight, and he's wanting to bring them into the cockpit to see that wonderful view.
You get a little bit more funny banter in the cockpit as well.
Yeah, with him and his co-pilot.
Yeah. We just keep saying yes, Captain.
Yep. It's like that's the only thing I want to hear out of your mouth is yes, yes, Captain, and the landing gear is ready. And he just says yes, Captain the whole time. He's like, I was just kidding, right? It seems like this guy is, and I think they pushed it. It was like he was always kind of well respected. People liked him a lot. He was very, charismatic.
Which is interesting, actually. That's one of my favorite things about the way they split the game because half of what I'm thinking here is if I didn't have the history of a bird story, what would I think about him at this point in his life? I would just think, oh, look, he's a successful pilot. It's purely the mystery of his life, but he seems to be fairly happy. He had a child, had a wife, had a life, whatever. But with the context of the bird story coming beforehand, I see him as inherently a loner now because of how he was as a child. And
Right.
so I just like that's like permeating all these interactions he's having either with his wife and in the decision to change something in his life or even now with him as the pilot. Like, was he uncomfortable that whole time if he was seen as successful and and charming and entertaining and all that? Like, is that a thing that he is that the person he became throughout his life, or is that the persona that he put on, and maybe his whole life he's felt like an imposter because he's been trying to be this outgoing person, but that's not who he is. I mean, again, maybe that's reading
Hmm.
way too much into the links between this here, but it's the kind of thing that I really enjoyed while playing A Bird Story, is like thinking about what these things mean in the background. But now, having played A Bird Story right before jumping into Finding Paradise, that link feels as strong as it could be. And I'm just wondering how much of the childhood that we got a glimpse of actually matters to this game, or was it just a frivolous side story that is charming in its own right, but doesn't have any bearing on Finding Paradise? I tend to think it probably
Right.
will matter, but I'm not sure how.
I would hope
Yeah, I
so.
would hope so.
I guess we'll see. Unfortunately, that is where I stopped. We'll have to continue playing. And one thing I should mention that the quality of this podcast may be rough because both Matt and I are in hotel rooms. We are currently traveling for work, so we are recording this on laptops with not the best internet. So hopefully it sounds okay. If not, whatever.
Unlikely we'll both be traveling at
We
the
do
same
it.
time again anytime soon.
Yeah, probably not. I will be traveling for the next episode as well. So I'll be right here in this hotel doing it again. So, we did have an email. This email is not about Finding Paradise. It's about Halo Reach. Unfortunately, I didn't get this till after we had recorded, so you'll have to forgive me for that. It comes in from Daniel. It says, "Hey guys, I grew up with Halo, starting with Combat Evolved, and stayed a die-hard fan all the way to Halo 4 before I fell off. Only within the last year or so having played Halo 5. My copy of Infinite is still largely untouched. That said, I read the first several novels back when I was immersed in the Halo series, and the idea of Reach and the other Spartans always intrigued me so much. I can still remember first hearing about the game and how excited I was to get to play a game set in this period of time and location of the series, and boy, did it not disappoint. While my memories of overall experience have faded over the years since the first and only playthrough, I generally remember enjoying the majority of the overall experience. My recollection of the final mission, Lone Wolf, remains ever present. The desperate feeling I felt as Noble Six became the last survivor, the creeping hopelessness as I realized that there was no way my relatively unknown hero was going to make it out alive like the Chief had done so many times before when I played his story. Uh, the end was so emotional and impactful, and despite the somber end to our hero, the last scene to the chief escaping the planet, knowing the tremendous weight and victory that would bring about, made the sacrifice worthwhile, made it almost beautiful in a way. I loved Reach and its bold ending. Daniel,
Well said, because
thank you.
I really enjoy that. I
Absolutely.
really enjoy that ending as well.
Yeah, I liked Halo Reach a good amount. In fact, I would say it was probably my favorite Halo game that I played.
What was I keep going back to
So,
that one touch point on the PSP God of War where your daughter's trying to hug you and you're actively mashing buttons to push them away. And I feel like that, similar to the ending of Halo for me, is a little bit of like a gameplay abstraction of what is, a very emotional moment. And it really is
yeah,
that dawning of, yeah, you're gonna die here, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like the idea that you're still fighting, and how long do you fight before you give up, right? That could be extrapolated to anyone in any number of movies in any zombie apocalypse. How do you keep fighting, or do you just give in and end it?
yep. Save that last bullet for yourself.
And it's kind of a heavy thing, but the gameplay is not really any different. You're just shooting at bad guys, but the importance of it, the impact of it, far transcends the actual gameplay of the moment. And I always think of that moment in God of War because it was the same thing for me. Button mashing does
Yeah,
not correlate with pushing your own daughter away from you.
yeah,
Some good moments.
absolutely. Thank you for that email, Daniel. And if you would like to send us an email, it is drew@ztgd.com. You can also tweet to us. I am at DMLFury, Matt is at REMGS, and the podcast itself is at ZTGD Phoenix Down. But that's going to be it for us. Um, Small little episode, but that's okay. Under the circumstances of me being in another state away from my wife, I think we did all right. But yeah, we'll be continuing on with Finding Paradise next. And then we have not decided on what we're going to do after that. I'm assuming we're going to go back to Greedfall, which was originally what we had chosen, if I can find the time to play it. New job, all that kind of stuff. Whew, man, a lot has happened in the past couple of weeks. But we're going to make it through that. Until next time, though, I am Drew.
I'm Matt.
And we are out of here. You guys have a great week, and we'll be back next week with the continuation and conclusion to Finding Paradise.